An explanation of the Long COVID Single System Thesis, Part 2, Long COVID and Formula C. The lingering symptoms of COVID-19 infection are an increasingly worrying concern as the disease has progressed since the beginning of the pandemic in late 2019. The group of symptoms and ailments that continue to affect individuals long after infection is known by several names, including long COVID, post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 or PASC, PASC, post-acute COVID-19 syndrome or PAX, PACS, long-haul COVID, post-acute COVID-19, chronic COVID, and post-COVID. Common long COVID indications are increased inflammatory responses, extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, continued loss of smell, muscle aches, and extend to approximately 200 diverse symptoms. An interesting place to start are the cytokine interactions from SARS and COVID-19. The direct COVID-19 infection has been attributed to a number of enzymatic and fatalistic immune responses, including acute respiratory distress syndrome, macrophage activation syndrome, and cytokine release syndrome. Being nearly 70% genetically identical to severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS-CoV-1, which was responsible for the SARS outbreak in the early 2000s, many of the COVID-19 enzymatic mechanisms of action have been inferred from studies of the incredibly similar respiratory diseases. Specifically, SARS has been known to use glycoprotein interactions to attach to and enter human angiotensin-converting enzyme 2S, resulting in the upregulation of NF-kappa-beta signaling pathways and increasing cytokine levels responsible for a variety of inflammatory symptoms. This cytokine storm results in an uptick of CRP, COX-2, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6, interleukin-8, interleukin-10, interleukin-16, INOS, MCP-1, PGE-2, TNF-alpha, and nitric oxide, culminating in acute lung injury, pneumonia, and potentially pulmonary failure. Many of these cytokines and their respective mechanisms of action have been directly implicated as drivers of immune response overreaction in COVID-19 patients and are believed to be contributors to long-lasting symptoms in patients suffering long COVID. Understanding the enzymatic mechanisms and interactions of these cytokines is crucial in developing effective treatment options for COVID-19 patients and addressing the lingering symptoms of long COVID. If we take a look at phytocannabinoids and Formula C, we know that phytocannabinoids and terpenes have a long history of showing anti-inflammatory effects through various mechanisms of action, including those caused by cytokines. These compounds are known to decrease the NF-kappa-beta signaling pathway, inhibit TNF-alpha, interleukin-1 beta and interleukin-6 cytokines, and lower C-reactive proteins and nitric oxide, all important mediators of inflammation. Terpenes inhibit inflammatory cytokines, for example, myrcene for interleukin-2 and interleukin-4, limonene for interleukin-10 and VEGF, linalool for TNF-alpha, and caryophyllene for interleukin-8 and TNF-alpha. As mentioned in Part 1, the endocannabinoid system, or ECS, is a highly conserved system that plays a central role in regulating our most critical bodily functions. A key function of the ECS is to modulate immune response through cytokines, which are signaling molecules that coordinate the immune response. In the case of COVID-19, immune system overreaction may lead to a cytokine storm, resulting in inflammation and tissue damage. Phytocannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids, such as those found in Entourage's Formula C, have been shown to be effective in reducing inflammation and modulating immune response. Current treatment options for long COVID symptoms often consist of medications that come with unwanted side effects. Formula C research reported 0 significant adverse events and is tolerated well by patients. Study participants responded well to treatment with reduced symptoms. The unique combination of compounds work together to provide an optimized and targeted approach to reduce inflammation and modulate the immune response. This can be especially beneficial for patients experiencing long COVID symptoms and pursuing treatment options. Which leads us to the single system thesis. As the ECS is responsible for maintaining homeostasis in the body, and post-acute COVID patients present multiple, seemingly unrelated symptoms, might not the ECS itself have been damaged by the acute infection? As phytocannabinoids and terpenes could potentially mute effects of acute infection, might they not be able to restore the ECS to proper function? If an impaired ECS was part of the problem, bringing it back to proper function should result in the ECS bringing the rest of the body into homeostasis. To test this single-system hypothesis, Dr. Michael Stewart, a physician renowned for his work in HIV, another RNA virus, developed a novel complex combination of phytocannabinoids and terpenes designed to mute the impact of COVID on the ECS, and conducted an IRB-approved U.S. blinded placebo-controlled human clinical trial with long COVID patients. In the trial, 9 of the most common long COVID symptoms were tracked: ability to participate in social roles, cognitive function, satisfaction with social roles and activities, dyspnea severity, emotional distress anxiety, emotional distress depression, fatigue, pain, and sleep disturbance, in addition to tracking patients' global impression of change, or PGIC score. Endourage's Formula C improved all 9 symptoms within the first 28 days and showed continued improvement in all symptoms other than pain over the trial's 56-day period. Statistical significance was achieved on the top 2 symptoms, emotional distress anxiety and sleep disturbance, and patients' global impression of change doubled in the first 28 days and tripled by day 56. Positively impacting 8 out of 9 seemingly unrelated symptoms supports the single-system hypothesis and points to Formula C as a potentially highly effective adjunctive therapy for those treating long COVID patients. Results of the trial have been published in a highly regarded, peer-reviewed medical journal. Endourage is currently working with long COVID centers around the country to make Formula C available to patients suffering with the disease.